Good morning. Even as the room is filling up, as we have many parallel meetings, I call to order the Joint General Assembly, Economic and Social Council special meeting on the theme From Digital Inclusion to Innovation, Advancing Science, Technology and Youth Entrepreneurship for Development. I'm pleased to convene this meeting together with the President of the Economic and Social Council, His Excellency Lok Bahadur Thapa. This is also underlining that we are taking the decisions of the General Assembly and ECOSOC very sincerely, and we are working on our efficiency with a coherent and joint meetings to avoid duplications between the General Assembly and ECOSOC. Sorry. As mentioned in our letters of 6th and 23rd April and May 4th, 2026, the meeting is convened pursuant to Assembly Resolution 80/147 with a focus on advancing digital inclusion and youth entrepreneurship for sustainable development, reflecting a priority of the President of the Economic and Social Council. The meeting is also held in conjunction with the 11th Multi-Stakeholder Forum on Science, Technology and Innovation for the Sustainable Development Goals. We warmly welcome all of you to this meeting. This meeting will comprise an opening segment followed by 2 panel discussions. The first panel discussion will focus on challenges and opportunities in developing countries in relation to science, technology and innovation. And the second will focus on youth innovation in action, creating enabling environments for youth-led entrepreneurship, advancing STI skills, and leveraging strategic finance. Following the conclusion of the second panel discussion, the President of the Economic and Social Council will preside over a closing segment. I will now make a statement as the President of the General Assembly. Your Excellency, Mr. Lok Bahadur Thapa, President of the Economic and Social Council, Excellencies, dear colleagues. Thank you for joining us today for this, as I said, joint meeting on science, technology and innovation, from digital inclusion to innovation, advancing science, technology and youth entrepreneurship for development. Allow me again, because of my cough, first and foremost to thank my co-president and friend, His Excellency Lok Bahadur, and his office for this joint meeting, because this joint meeting is our way to contribute to the overall effort of being more efficient and coherent and to avoid unnecessary duplication between the General Assembly and ECOSOC, and we hope that this will be also a blueprint for further processes. Famed microbiologist and chemist Louis Pasteur once said, I quote, "Science knows no country because knowledge belongs to humanity." I'm sure if you told this, especially to young people, they would more than agree, because they are at the age where youthful imagination meets young adult ambition. And in an era where, honestly, almost anything seems possible without borders, and if we join hands in the understanding of our common humanity and in the spirit of being better together. And this is exactly the spirit we need these days. And we can see what we can achieve together in the spirit of being better together, not only here at the United Nations, but all over the world. I guess almost all of us, especially those with kids, at least my kids really forced me to watch this. A few weeks ago, we all watched as human beings circled the moon, soaring further from the Earth than any person before. And from outer space, it was one Earth, one planet. We see it also in many other innovative fields. Renewable energies, for example, once kicked off in one part of the world, especially in Europe, and now surging at the next level of innovation and investment, particularly in Asia, and being one of the success stories also for other continents, especially Africa, to finally provide electricity for all the people who were previously unconnected. In the health sector, for example, medications from Denmark's Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly of the United States, among others, could one day spell the end of obesity and related health conditions for everyone. Clearly, when knowledge is shared and when innovation is driven collectively, the boundaries of what is possible expand to all of us. Just as Louis Pasteur said, science knows no country because knowledge belongs to humanity. Yet, we also know that this is unfortunately not the reality everywhere. While knowledge, science, and innovation may belong to all of humanity, their benefits have not reached all people equally. Some may race to the moon, while others labor for electricity. Some can use an app to open their blinds or check their fridges, while others have no phone at all. That is why today's discussions matter. It is about closing that divide and sharing the benefits, the wonders of modern science, innovation, and technology with all. So, the crucial question for the workshops, how do we do that? How do we make the idea that knowledge belongs to humanity, not only in principle, but in practice, a reality? How do we do this? By investing in capacities, particularly for young people. That means boosting education and financing science and research. We do it by sharing technologies and understanding that pooling our resources, technology, and know-how is the only clear path to a better future for all of us. And we do it by tackling the barriers that persist, by putting in place a conducive policy environment for excellence and innovation. In short, we do it bridging the divide by delivering on the SDGs, on all of them. On this regard, I would like to point out to the ongoing discussions where some of the colleagues are right now around the corner, the International Migration Review Forum. Because innovation is best if not thought in silos and not excluded by walls. Because well-governed migration is in fact a tool to foster science, innovation, and technology. As a case in point, I would note the success, for example, of BioNTech, which developed the first widely used mRNA COVID-19 vaccines in partnership with Pfizer. Their company is based in Germany. However, the founders, Dr. Uğur Şahin and Dr. Özlem Türeci, a married couple and medical scientists, were born children of Turkish immigrants. Their work helped save millions of lives across the globe. Possible because of migration. Their story is remarkable, yet not unique. Around the world, migrants are leading tech companies, piloting new medical procedures, and ushering in the next era of renewables. Make no mistake, a pro-innovation ecosystem is one that leverages the potential of the world's brightest minds and fosters innovation wherever it comes from. That includes migrants, to be sure, and it includes our own young people. It includes us here at the UN, you and your governments, for all of us to ensure that we have a common society and policy approach across all sectors. Consider the Silicon Savannah in Kenya with an all-society approach. Their tech startups such as iHub and M-Pesa empowering young people and helping to solve some of the country's development needs while fostering a culture of innovation. Indeed, their work on mobile banking has seen the number of people with access to bank accounts jump from 42% in 2011 to 75% in 2014. Or consider India's Space Research Organization, which has programs specifically targeting young people to design, build, and potentially launch satellites. These programs include Space on Wheels to reach remote rural communities. In Yuvika's young scientist programs and scientific initiatives are targeting especially women and girls in science. What each of these examples reflects is an appreciation that not only is science, technology, and innovation something that belongs to all of humanity, as Pasteur has said, but that it is driven by all of humanity. It is a communal understanding and undertaking that stands to the benefits of all of us, but only if we work together, only if we share the skills, the technologies, the resources, and of course, the benefits. As there are no shortage of ideas, no lack of imagination around the world, all that is lacking is investment for upscaling it everywhere. All that is needed is support for us to join forces globally between sectors and between countries to overcome the divide. Today's discussion is thus about meeting that support, about working together to foster solutions and innovations, wherever and from whomever they come. Because closing the digital and technology divide is not an act of charity. It is a shared investment, an SDG accelerator, and all of humanity endeavor, an effort to ensure that what belongs to humanity is truly shared by humanity. I thank you. I now invite His Excellency Lokbahadur Thapa, President of the Economic and Social Council, to make his remarks. Please, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Madam President of the General Assembly, Nalina Babok, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to this joint special meeting of the Economic and Social Council and the General Assembly on science, technology, and innovations for the sustainable development, and on the vital role of young people in advancing innovations and entrepreneurships. I warmly thank all of you for being here today, and I express my sincere appreciation to the President of the General Assembly for convening this joint dialogue. As highlighted by the President of the General Assembly, we both are deeply committed to bring coherence, to bring coordinations, and to bring complementarities between the General Assembly and the ECOSOC. Excellencies, we meet at a critical moment. The promise of the 2030 agenda remains alive, but the path to its realizations is under strain. Geopolitical tensions, rising inequalities, and the accelerating pace of technological change are creating the serious obstacles. And if we do not act with urgency and with coherence, this process will deepen existing divides rather than bridge them. Excellencies, for much of the developing world, the emergence of a large and dynamic youth generation stands as a vital demographic asset that holds immense potential for inclusive growth, for innovations, and for shared prosperity. Nearly 60% of Africa's population is under age of 25, rendering it the youngest regions in the world. In many countries in the regions, more than 3/4 of the citizens are under 30. It is therefore incumbent upon us to provide these rising generations with hope, with optimism, and with opportunities so that we can leverage this extraordinary demographic dividend for the advancement of our societies and the betterment of our shared future. Yet, youth unemployment remains one of the most persistent labor market challenges. More than 65 million young people around the world are unemployed, and a youth unemployment rate of 13% tells only part of the story. Behind that figure are millions more young people trapped in precarious informal employment with no clear pathways forward. This is the reality we must hold in mind as we deliberate. These young people are digital natives, and they represent a significant opportunities for innovations and for entrepreneurships. Yet again, this promise stands in stark contrast to today's realities. To our utter dismay, around 2.7 billion people, that is one-third of the humanity, are still offline. By 2025, high-income countries are nearing universal internet use. In contrast, in the least developed countries, only 36% are online. And in some countries, especially in Africa, barely 1 in 10 enjoys access to internet. For youth, globally, about 70% of them are online. In low-income countries, that share drops sharply. Similarly, the gender gap is stark. In low-income countries, 90% of the adolescent girls and young women are offline versus 78% of boys and young men. These gaps are not abstract. They drive exclusion, they weaken competitiveness, they limit access to public services, and they further deepen gender inequality. Excellencies, for young people, the costs are clear. Weaker access to education, higher unemployment, limited finance, and fewer chances to innovate. The International Labour Organization warns of a new risk. AI could accelerate progress, but also create a digital dark age. In developing countries, 26% of jobs face disruptions without the infrastructure or energy to benefit from the AI. The risk is deeper and more permanent divide. Dependence on foreign technologies grows, data gaps widen, gains concentrate, digital sovereignty comes under strain. But this path is not fixed. With adequate investment in infrastructure, in digital skills, and inclusive AI ecosystems, AI can still help countries leapfrog and grow more equitably. To unlock the full potential of these young people around the world, we must ensure that they have what every young person deserves. That is quality education, decent work, digital inclusion, and enabling conditions for innovations and entrepreneurship. These are the preconditions that allow their talents to flourish and their aspirations to be fully realized. On this, they simply need the right support, investment in skills, finance, and inclusive access to technology so that their creativity, their energy, and their ingenuity can drive our aspirations for sustainable development. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, today's discussion should help us identify practical ways to strengthen science, technology, and innovations ecosystems, address persistent gaps, and support youth as drivers of economic transformations. Allow me to highlight 3 key messages. First, we must move beyond access to empowerment. Connecting young people to the internet is not enough. We must empower them. We must build innovation ecosystems where young people are not merely users, but entrepreneurs, creators, and economic actors in their own right. Second, youth are not future resources. They are a present asset and imperative. There are 1.2 billion young people today, projected to reach 1.3 billion by 2030. Investing in the connections between learning and earning is essential to unlocking their potential. Third, emerging technology must not widen the divide, and financing must enable action. Emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence, must be governed in a ways that promote transparency, accountability, and fairness. Stronger financing, partnership, and international cooperations are essential to move from commitment to actions and from frameworks to results. Excellencies, ECOSOC has a central role to play in ensuring that this agenda is coordinated, evidence-based, and accountable. We must lead our efforts to expand digital access and infrastructure, investment in digital sector, facilitate technology transfer, and provide capacity building support for youth entrepreneurship and encourage youth-led innovations. Together with the President of the General Assembly, we are advancing joint work on digital inclusion, STI, and youth entrepreneurship for development. The implementation gap between what we commit to and what we deliver must close. Good practices exist, the knowledge exists, and the energy and creativity of 1.2 billion people, young people, exist. What is needed now is the will to act and the courage to act together. What is at stake is not only progress on the goals, it is the opportunity we extend or deny on entire generations. Let us commit to advancing digital inclusion, strengthening innovation ecosystems, and championing youth entrepreneurship so as to build resilient and inclusive economies. Our collective future depends on the actions we take today. Let us deliver better together, leaving no nations and no young people behind. I thank you.
I thank the President of the Economic and Social Council in this spirit of better together and leaving no one behind. I would like to announce that before proceeding to the next segment, I would like to remind delegation that as indicated in the program, we will have the opportunity to hear from members and stakeholders during the two panel discussions. There will be no pre-established list of speakers. Delegations wishing to speak will be asked to press the microphone button. Time limits of 3 minutes for delegations speaking on behalf of group and 2 minutes for those speaking in their national capacity will apply. The time limits will be strictly implemented through automatic microphone cutoffs. A timer will be projected on the screen. Those speaking on behalf of a group should approach the Secretariat to be given priority in the speaking order. By this, I have the honor to start with the panel discussion, which will be moderated by Ms. Ursula Winhoven, Director and Representative of the International Telecommunication Union to the United Nations in New York. I now hand over the meeting to Ms. Winhoven. We will now have a brief pause for a podium change. The opening segment is now concluded. I thank you.
Good morning. Madam President, Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, speakers, and young innovators. My name is Ursula Winhoven. I'm from the ITU here in New York, and I'm honored to moderate today's interactive discussions of the joint special meeting convened by the President of the General Assembly and the President of the Economic and Social Council. We now proceed to panel 1 on challenges and opportunities in developing countries in relation to science, technology, innovation. I have with me on the podium our distinguished panelists. I'll introduce them. We have His Excellency Mr. Rein Tamsar, Permanent Representative of Estonia to the United Nations, Mr. Elliot Minchenberg, Director, UNESCO New York Office and Representative to the United Nations, and Ms. Catherine Nagila, African Foundation for Women and Youth in Education, Sciences, Technology and Innovation. Despite the transformative potential of science, technology and innovation, benefits remain unevenly distributed. This panel discussion will examine persistent gaps and opportunities in developing countries related to governance capacities for STI-led development, digital infrastructure, access to finance, technology transfer, and innovation, while also considering the implications of emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence. We have around an hour and a bit. We will begin with the panelists' remarks, followed by the interventions from the floor, and then a wrap-up by our esteemed panelists. The guiding questions for the first discussion are as follows. What are the most pressing structural and governance challenges that developing countries face in harnessing science, technology, and innovation for sustainable development? And what opportunities exist to leverage STI? The second one is, what are the 3 most critical actions or recommendations to ensure that developing countries could leverage STI for sustainable development? And thirdly, how can international cooperation and partnerships be harnessed more effectively to support technology transfer, financing, and capacity development in developing countries? I remind our distinguished panelists that they will have 5 minutes each for their remarks, and it is my pleasure to hand, first of all, to His Excellency Mr. Rein Tammsaar, Permanent Representative of Estonia to the UN.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I'm, of course, pleased to be with you and participate in this panel discussion, speaking also on behalf of my co-chair, Ambassador Lopez of El Salvador, with whom we've been working very, very closely to make the first global dialogue on AI governance a reality in July. Allow me to offer a few reflections on challenges and opportunities, as mentioned. First, in our extensive consultation with member states in New York, Paris, and Geneva, and stakeholders from across the world, it has been made clear to us that many developing countries are not only concerned about the risk of being left behind in the digital transformation that AI brings, but they are also determined to ensure they are active contributors, actually, to AI development. This also explains, I guess, the huge interest towards the first global dialogue. But it is true at the same time that mentioned concerns are grounded in a very real constraints, including limited access to infrastructure, compute capacity, data, and investment, as well as persistent linguistic and digital divides that shape who benefits from emerging technologies like AI. These constraints were also mentioned by the chair in the introduction, I believe. At the same time, it has been equally striking how much optimism there is about what science, technology, and innovation, including AI, can deliver. We witnessed this while being in India for AI Impact Summit ourselves with my co-chair. Across regions, there is a very strong sense that these tools can serve as enablers of development, from improving healthcare systems and strengthening food security to enhancing innovation in education and expanding economic opportunity. Many refer to this bright version of AI as a global public good. In particular, it has been very encouraging in our consultations to speak with young people. Many of them are not only aware of the transformative potential of AI, but are actively and eager to develop it further and harness it in a way that benefits themselves, their families, communities, and more broadly humanity as a whole. They see themselves not as a passive users of technology, but as a creators, entrepreneurs, and problem solvers. What they consistently highlight, however, is the same thing: need for access to the right tools, skills, financing, and enabling environment to turn that ambition into reality. So this is why digital inclusion cannot be understood as an end in itself. It is the foundation upon which meaningful youth entrepreneurship and innovation ecosystems are built. And without addressing structural barriers such as connectivity, skills development, access to finance and supportive legislative environments, the potential of young innovators will remain constrained. So against this backdrop and having in mind a general fragmentation of AI landscape, the objective of a global dialogue on AI governance, which my co-chair and I are leading, is to help create a more inclusive and practical space or platform, if you wish, for these issues to be addressed collectively using the convening power of the UN. And in our refined zero-draft version on proposed structure and themes of a dialogue that was circulated yesterday, 2 of the 4 clusters appear to be more relevant to our discussion today. And these are AI opportunities and implications and bridging AI divides. So after introducing our refined framework of the dialogue to the member states this and next week, we will move forward and will work on all the details of the thematic discussions and panels. And we are eager to share this work with you. For us as a co-chairs, inclusivity is not simply a guiding principle, it is a condition for legitimacy and effectiveness. And our aim is therefore to ensure that the first global dialogue on AI governance brings together governments and multi-stakeholders in a genuinely meaningful way to translate shared aspirations and lessons learned into practical collaboration and to support pathways where innovation and cooperation work hand in hand, including, of course, for sustainable development. And meanwhile, the International Scientific Panel's report that we are expecting should provide scientific evidence to inform our political deliberations in Geneva. Finally, we have been also working hard to assure that there is a possibility available to participate for those who cannot maybe afford it for financial reasons. And this is where coming back to inclusivity and its importance. And finally, as you know, until 7th of May, there is also an option to provide your written contribution for the dialogue, and we received so far more than 1,200 inputs. So we count on your active participation in a dialogue. We are indeed better together, and we need not to leave anyone behind. And thank you again.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Tamsar. I now give the floor to Elliot Minchenberg, Director of the UNESCO New York office and representative to the UN.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, dear Ursula. Madam President of the General Assembly, Mr. President of the ECOSOC, Ambassador Tamsar, Professor Nguila, distinguished guests and colleagues, it's a pleasure for me to join you today for this important conversation. As we know, in today's rapidly changing world, science, technology, and innovation are essential tools for addressing the global challenges. And from climate change to public health, from education to economic resilience, sustainable solutions depend on how effectively we harness knowledge and innovation. UNESCO has been supporting countries for over several years in building strong national systems through policy guidance, capacity development, and international partnerships. Yet, across many developing countries, key challenges remain: producing reliable STI data, building statistical capacities, and strengthening evidence-based policymaking, just to name a few. In recent years, we have worked alongside countries, particularly across Africa, to address these gaps. We have developed practical tools to support countries to map their STI systems and make them facilitate informed decisions on STI policies. But in this context, let me highlight 4 priorities which we believe require particular attention when addressing the question of challenge and opportunities related to STI, and on which UNESCO is actively engaged. First and foremost, I would say education. Strong STI systems must be grounded in strong education system and in access to comprehensive science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education, STEM education. STEM education is about more than technical skills. It's about creativity, problem solving, and enabling young people to become creators of solutions, not just users of technologies developed elsewhere. And as I said, this journey begins in schools. UNESCO is investing upstream, supporting countries in strengthening STEM systems from the earliest stage. And in this process, teachers are central. We support trainings of educators in fields such as AI and robotics, ensuring they are equipped for today's realities, which is, of course, essential to ensure that the teachers have the right skills so they can provide students and learners with the right education. But beyond classroom, UNESCO works through a global network of institutions that extend opportunity and excellence into higher education and research as well. On the African continent, Campus Africa is our flagship initiative, supporting universities to become engines of scientific innovation. It helps advance and upgrade the research capacities of African higher education institutions in areas critical to the continent's future, from agriculture to renewable energy to digital technologies. Today, Campus Africa connects institutions in 46 countries, engaged 110 universities, and has reached more than 25,000 students, contributing to Africa's Agenda 2063. These efforts also build on a broader ecosystem developed over decades. As an example, since its creation in 1964, the Abdus Salam International Center for Theoretical Physics in Trieste, which is a UNESCO center, has trained more than 180,000 scientists from nearly 190 countries. Its alumni now serves as professors, research leaders, and policymakers across the Global South. Yet, access to opportunity remains unequal, as we know, and our work focuses where gaps are the widest across Africa, small island developing states, and parts of the Arab region and Asia Pacific, and especially on women and girls in science. Today, only 1 in 3 researchers globally is a woman. Closing this gap is indeed essential, not only for equity, but for the quality of innovation itself. The second priority, which I would like to emphasize today, is the access to science and the benefits of sciences. Even the best trained scientists cannot deliver if knowledge is locked behind paywalls or if essential tools remain out of reach. Equity in science is equity in access. In 2021, UNESCO member states adopted the recommendation on open science, the first global standard of its kind. Its principle is clear: scientific knowledge belongs to humanity, and all of us should benefit from it. But equity in science also means equal access to infrastructure. Advanced research facilities remain unevenly distributed worldwide. One of UNESCO's long-term ambitions, for example, is to support the creation of an African Light Source, a center for accelerator of particles in Africa. Every other continent has one. And we will be working on this in the coming years. Meanwhile, we are facilitating the access of researchers from Africa to existing global facilities around the world so they can train, collaborate, and contribute to sciences. The third priority is the governance of emerging technologies, and in particular AI, and Ambassador Tamsar just addressed that in his intervention. Global rules must be shaped with developing countries. In 2021, 193 member states of UNESCO adopted the recommendation on ethics of artificial intelligence, the first, and it remains the first, global normative instrument of its kind. But more importantly, today 109 countries are engaged in the implementation of the recommendation, assessing their readiness on AI, including 29 African countries and 9 small island developing states. And UNESCO also serves with partners ITU as the joint secretariat of the Global Dialogue on AI Governance, ensuring that all countries are part of shaping the rules of the digital future. Finally, partnerships. None of this, as we know, can be achieved alone. The L'Oréal UNESCO for Women in Science program, spanning nearly 3 decades, illustrates the power of partnership to advance science and access to science for everyone. Together, we have recognized more than 4,900 women scientists from around 140 countries. And today, One of those prominent scientists is here with us. Dear Professor Ngila, it is a pleasure to share this panel with you. Your journey reminds us that recognition is not an endpoint, it's a starting point. Through your foundation, you are extending opportunities to the next generation and multiplying impact far beyond individual achievement. Partnerships also extend to academia. UNESCO's network of more than 950 chairs, university chairs, and partners universities across over 100 countries strengthens cooperation, especially across the Global South, and supports initiatives such as Campus Africa that I just mentioned. And last but not least, we partner with youth. Through the Global Youth Grant Scheme, launched in 2023, we have already supported 240 youth-led projects across 91 countries. The message is clear: when young people are given trust, support, and real partnerships, they deliver. Because ultimately, the question before is not whether science, technology, and innovation will shape the future. We know it will contribute to it actively. But it is our role at the UN to ensure that everyone is part of its contribution, every country, every researcher, every young innovator. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elliot. It is now my pleasure to turn to Professor Catherine Ngila, African Foundation for Women and Youth in Education, Sciences, Technology and Innovation. Professor, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Your Excellencies, our moderator, our delegates. Good morning. Africa, and today I'll be speaking about basically challenges that we encounter for youth, for them to realize their goals. But I also want to focus on Africa, as I come from Kenya. And so therefore, I've worked both in Kenya as well as in South Africa, and I've got some comments to make. So Africa has got the youngest, and we have already had that, population in the world, with 70% in sub-Saharan Africa who are under 35 years. Such a high number of young people is an opportunity for the continent's growth, but only if youth is fully empowered with the right skills and also investment to realize their potential. It is especially important that young people are included in decision-making and given the opportunities for them to work and innovate. The continent is simultaneously, of course, grappling with the high youth unemployment, no jobs, and underemployment, underutilized skills, despite the expansion of access in higher education. This disconnect between the academic curriculum and the dynamic demands of the labor market has created skills mismatch, contributing to an employment gap and underutilized workforce. Entrepreneurship, particularly in Africa, small and medium enterprises are the backbone of Africa economies, creating majority of new jobs and also driving the grassroots innovations. And unemployment among graduates is rising. Traditional job markets is shrinking. There is urgent need to reposition higher education. But then what are the challenges? The challenges, one of them being skills mismatch. The higher education that we are receiving are not matching with the needs for the employment sector. And so therefore something must happen. Harmonization of the skills and curriculum needs to be looked at. If I give an example, in Kenya, we have started what we call the competence-based education and training. That has already been running in so many countries. I've traveled to many countries, including Germany, where students, by the time they graduate, they have got skills, they have already seen what the industry requires, and therefore their education is tailored. So what can we do? We need to invest. That is, Africa needs to invest. And I think when I talk about Africa, I'm talking about a global south. We need to increase investment so that we can be able to have our youth realize their goals. But of course, with capacity building in terms of also infrastructure is also lacking. So that is something that we have to address. And so it is very, very important for us to rethink and ask ourselves, are we really investing enough so that our youth, education, access, gender equality are all addressed? So investment, and prioritization, and also aligning education so that it can match with the employment sector. Thank you, Madam Director.
Thank you very much, Professor Ngila. We now open the floor for interventions, and delegations wishing to speak in the first discussion are invited to press the microphone button now. Members are reminded that they're encouraged to ask either short and focused questions or to deliver brief remarks. As mentioned earlier, interventions should not be more than 2 minutes for delegations speaking in their national capacity and not more than 3 minutes for delegations speaking on behalf of a group of member states. Time limits will be strictly enforced by automatic microphone cutoff, and a timer will be projected on the screen. To assist speakers to observe their time limits, their microphone will start blinking 30 seconds before the time limit elapses. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Guyana, speaking on behalf of the Caribbean community. They will be followed by the European Union.
Distinguished Presidents of the General Assembly and the Economic and Social Council, esteemed panelists, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the 14 member states of the Caribbean community. At the outset, allow me to express our gratitude to you for organizing this joint meeting in conjunction with the 2026 Multi-Stakeholder Forum on Science, Technology and Innovation for Sustainable Development Goals, being convened over the next 2 days. We thank the panelists for their insightful presentations. Presidents, colleagues, our region, like the rest of the world, is bearing witness to the rapid technological developments that have occurred in recent years, especially in artificial intelligence. We recognize the critical benefits that these advancements can bring forth, but simultaneously are mindful that with these unprecedented opportunities for development come new challenges and threats. Similarly, we are mindful of the widening digital divide and the need for urgent action to ensure that our people, those of the developing world, are not left behind. CARICOM's commitment to this is demonstrated in the policy goals outlined in the CARICOM Strategic Plan 2022 to 2030. This plan calls for the region to achieve harmonized ICT policies, legislation, technical standards, and services that foster economic, social, and cultural integration for the benefit of all citizens. It is an illustration of our steadfast belief that science, technology, and innovation have and will continue to play an indispensable role in strengthening our regional economy, advancing education, and ultimately achieving the SDGs. Colleagues, even as our regional leadership is pursuing this agenda with enthusiasm, the reality is that meaningful multilateral, multi-stakeholder actions will be imperative to achieving a global digital transformation that is both inclusive and transparent, and that puts particular focus on addressing the accessibility challenges of developing countries, especially SIDS. Cooperation across a spectrum of stakeholders, including national governments, multilateral organizations, academia, civil society, and the private sector will be a requirement. Against this backdrop, rapid technological advancement, digital transformation, artificial intelligence, and the green transition are redefining industries, labor markets, and governance itself. We therefore believe that our responsibility is not simply to educate, but to equip our young people, ensuring that they possess the skills, adaptability, digital literacy, and entrepreneurial mindset and opportunity required to thrive in a rapidly evolving global landscape. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Guyana, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the European Union, who will be followed by Malawi.
Madam President, Mr. President, Excellencies, dear colleagues, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the European Union and its 27 member states. Thank you, Honorable President, for convening us today, and to the panelists for their insightful contributions. We all agree that science, technology, and innovation, STI, are vital to achieve the SDGs. Amid rapid technological change and geopolitical divisions, we all look at the UN to provide strategic leadership in safeguarding the STI ecosystem. By working together, we can harness STI potential for humanity, and in particular for developing countries, while tracking challenges and reducing risks. The EU remains committed to the effective implementation of the Pact for the Future, the Global Digital Compact. We are leveraging science and technology for the effective delivery of sustainable, resilient, right-based and innovative solutions to achieve the SDGs, while championing an open, fair and inclusive environment for scientific and technological development. A prime example of these commitments is Horizon Europe, the EU Research Framework Programme, which allocates over 60% of its budget to sustainable developments, encouraging international participation to foster innovative solutions that address global challenges. At the UN, we collaborate with the Interagency Task Force of STI for the SDGs to support locally tailored research and innovation agenda, with a strong focus on capacity building, institutional strengthening, and local ownership, including by supporting national STI for SDGs roadmaps. With the Global Gateway Strategy, the EU is also investing in people and building alliances towards prosperity. We invest in high-quality education as well as research and innovation cooperation because they can build up knowledge-based economy and innovative value chain, closing the investment gap in a socially and environmentally sustainable manner. We also support the digital transition of our partners while boosting EU competitiveness in AI, quantum, cybersecurity, and semiconductors. Our 2025 International Digital Strategy drives the EU digital cooperation to advance universal and meaningful digital transformation globally. Through EU initiatives such as the Global Gateway and the Tech Business Offer, we promote secure, resilient, and inclusive digital infrastructure worldwide, from connectivity to compute. We advance open source solution, digital commons, cybersecurity, DPI, and international interoperability standards. Excellencies, dear colleagues, as new and emerging technologies create new opportunities and challenges, we will keep working with partners to tackle new divides, new dependencies.
I thank the distinguished representative of the European Union, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Malawi on behalf of least developed countries, who will be followed by Cuba and then El Salvador.
Thank you, Madam President. Excellencies, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the group of least developed countries. At the outset, the LDC group wishes to extend sincere appreciation to the Presidents of the General Assembly and ECOSOC for convening this timely meeting on such an important issue. I also thank the presenters. Excellencies, for LDCs, science, technology, and innovation are not peripheral. They are essential drivers of structural transformation, resilience, and sustainable development. So far, we have made some progress in digital inclusion, yet it remains uneven and fragile. As of 2024, only 36% of people in LDCs are using the internet. Persistent barriers in affordable accessibility, quality, and meaningful use continue to hold many back. In many LDCs, data costs can reach up to 6% of household income, placing connectivity out of reach for many. The digital gender gap at 13% remains wide, while rural populations continue to face disproportionate exclusion. The Doha Program of Action rightly identifies science, technology, and innovation as one of the 6 priority areas. Excellencies, despite the challenges that LDCs are facing, LDCs remain firmly committed to harnessing STI to address multidimensional vulnerabilities and advance the 2030 agenda. In this spirit, the group would like to put forward the following calls for action. First, prioritize increased investment, concessional financing in digital and energy infrastructure in LDCs, focusing on universal access to reliable electricity, affordable connectivity, and secure digital public infrastructure. Second, expand digital and technical skills, nurture startups, and build robust innovation ecosystems across all LDCs. We must strengthen the role of the Technology Bank for LDCs. To this end, we commend the continued contribution of Turkey and call on other partners, including the private sector, to expand their support. Third, strengthen support for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. The long statement will be put on the e-statement for any reference. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Malawi, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Cuba, who will be followed by El Salvador and Malaysia.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Distinguidos representantes, hace más de 2 años, en la cumbre de La Habana del Grupo de los 77 y China, los países del sur reafirmamos con claridad que la ciencia, la tecnología y la innovación no constituyen un lujo, sino una necesidad estratégica y un derecho indispensable para avanzar hacia el desarrollo sostenible. En ese espíritu, se impulsó la iniciativa de declarar el 16 de septiembre como el Día Internacional de la Ciencia, la Tecnología y la Innovación para el Sur, así como la propuesta de convocar esta reunión durante el 80 periodo de sesiones de la Asamblea General. El momento no podría ser más oportuno. Vivimos en un mundo marcado por profundas y persistentes desigualdades en el acceso al conocimiento y a las tecnologías. Los avances científicos, que para algunos representan prosperidad y bienestar, continúan siendo para la mayoría de los países del sur global una promesa incumplida. Esta brecha no es casual, es reflejo de un orden internacional injusto y excluyente que urge transformar. Para Cuba, la ciencia debe estar siempre al servicio de la humanidad. Ese principio ha guiado nuestra cooperación internacional, en particular en el ámbito de la salud, presente en 165 países y responsable de salvar más de 12 millones de vidas, enfrentando epidemias como el ébola y la COVID-19, así como desastres naturales. A pesar de las adversidades, nuestros científicos han logrado desarrollar medicamentos innovadores y vacunas propias contra la COVID-19, demostrando el valor del conocimiento cuando se pone al servicio del bien común. El bloqueo económico, comercial y financiero impuesto por el gobierno de los Estados Unidos, junto con el actual cerco energético, constituye un obstáculo severo para el desarrollo científico-tecnológico de nuestro país y un acto de castigo colectivo contra un pueblo que no representa amenaza para nadie. Muchas gracias.
I thank the distinguished representative of Cuba, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of El Salvador, followed by Malaysia and Indonesia.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. Excelencias, distinguidos colegas, El Salvador extiende su agradecimiento a la presidenta de la Asamblea General y el presidente del ECOSOC por convocar esta oportuna reunión orientada a abordar la inclusión digital y el emprendimiento juvenil como motores clave del desarrollo sostenible. En ese sentido, subrayamos la importancia de ampliar el acceso a las tecnologías digitales para cerrar brechas históricas, ya que persisten desafíos en materia de capacidades, infraestructura y acceso a recursos que continúan limitando la capacidad de los países en desarrollo para aprovechar el potencial de la ciencia, la tecnología, la innovación y garantizar que los y las jóvenes puedan beneficiarse de estas oportunidades. En ese sentido, El Salvador reafirma su compromiso para posicionarse como un centro regional de desarrollo tecnológico e innovación, avanzando con una ambiciosa agenda de transformación digital orientada a democratizar el acceso, fortalecer capacidades y construir un entorno propicio para la innovación mediante la expansión de infraestructura digital y la conectividad en todo el sistema público de educación, con iniciativas como Enlaces con la Educación, entregando más de 1.6 millones de dispositivos digitales a estudiantes y docentes, promoviendo el fortalecimiento de las habilidades digitales especializadas para los jóvenes mediante plataformas nacionales de formación. Reconocemos que para los países en desarrollo, incluidos los países de renta media, resulta indispensable fortalecer la cooperación internacional, por lo que hacemos un llamado a ampliar el acceso a financiamiento en condiciones favorables y fortalecer la transferencia de tecnología y la creación de capacidades.
I thank the distinguished representative of El Salvador, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Malaysia, followed by Indonesia and Morocco.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Malaysia welcomes the convening of this joint special meeting. We thank the panelists for their valuable insights. Allow me to share Malaysia's perspective on the subject under discussion. Malaysia's national approach is anchored in the My Digital Economy Blueprint, a unified strategy that consolidates previously fragmented initiatives under a single governance framework. Malaysia is systematically reforming over 700 regulatory provisions to enable seamless digital operations, data sharing, and innovation. People remain at the center of our national efforts. Malaysia is working toward near universal internet coverage while investing in digital literacy and workforce reskilling with the aim of creating 500,000 AI-related jobs and equipping 700,000 workers with relevant skills. Enhancing trust is equally important. Malaysia has introduced a national digital ID system and is advancing data sharing legislation alongside strengthening cybersecurity frameworks to address emerging risks. Innovation continues to be a key pillar. We are investing in emerging technologies while supporting startups and SMEs, ensuring that innovation is responsive to real-world needs of enterprises. We also see strong potential in sectors such as fintech, as well as developing digital platforms and technologies to serve the Islamic and halal economic sectors. Moderator, in closing, Malaysia reaffirms our focus on advancing digital inclusion, innovation, and youth entrepreneurship, and looks forward to exploring ways to translate to this discussion into sustainable outcomes. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Malaysia, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Indonesia, followed by Morocco and Venezuela.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Indonesia appreciates today's timely discussion on moving from digital inclusion to innovation, and also extend our appreciation to all briefers for their insightful presentations. Today's topic resonates with the opportunity and challenge landscape of my country, an archipelagic nation of more than 17,000 islands with a demographic dividend of around 200 million people of productive age. We believe that digital inclusion and bridging digital divide are more than policy targets. It is our bread and butter for national connectivity. To achieve the objective, Indonesia has deployed Satria-1 satellite and Bhakti broadband projects, progressively bringing high-speed internet to our most remote frontier regions. At the same time, we also believe that bridging the digital divide must go hand in hand with empowering youth as agents of change. Connectivity is just the starting line. We must ensure connectivity has rippling effects for the economy. To transition from inclusion to innovation, Indonesia is cultivating a vibrant creative economy for the youth, particularly in the digital sphere. Our 1,000 Digital Startups national movement nurtures over 1,400 youth-led ventures across the nation. Also, our national vocational creative synergy nurtures millions of digital natives from vocational schools to turn talent into sustainable careers. Through the projects, we want to ensure that youth are primary drivers of transformation, leveraging science and technology to build a more resilient and inclusive future. Distinguished delegates, to conclude, Indonesia looks forward to intensifying international cooperation in building digital ecosystems and ensuring young innovators have the opportunity to thrive. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Indonesia and now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Morocco, followed by Venezuela.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. The Kingdom of Morocco wishes to thank the President of the General Assembly and the President of the ECOSOC for convening this joint special meeting. Much has been said about closing the digital divide. The figures suggest a different problem. The gap is no longer about access. It is about the capacity of developing countries to build, host, and govern the technology they rely on. Africa holds less than 1% of global data center capacity. High-performance computing remains in a handful of countries. The asymmetry is now of design, of governance, and of ownership. Morocco believes the time has come to treat technology transfer as a political commitment rather than a technical clause. Sovereignty in this field also depends on patient capital, building research centers, training a generation of engineers, and bringing local technology to market takes 10 to 15 years. Most existing financing models today expect results within a maximum of 3 years. The instruments to act on this already do exist. The Global Digital Compact, the WISES Plus 20 review outcome, and the Independent Scientific Panel on EI, the Global Dialogue on EI next July. The summary of today's discussions should reach each of these tracks and shape the STI forum that opens for tomorrow. I conclude by bringing in Morocco Digital 2030 and Morocco EI 2030 that are built in that spirit. They place sovereignty, long-term investment, and the training of national talents at the center with Jazari institutes across the country. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Morocco, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Venezuela, followed by Timor-Leste and Austria.
Buenos días, señora presidenta. Gracias por darme la palabra. Venezuela agradece la oportunidad de participar en este importante diálogo sobre un tema que no solo es técnico, sino profundamente humano. Cómo garantizar que la ciencia, la tecnología y la innovación estén realmente al servicio de nuestros pueblos. Hoy hablamos de inclusión digital, pero sabemos que el desafío va mucho más allá del acceso. Para muchos países en desarrollo, la brecha no es solo tecnológica, sino estructural, pues persisten desigualdades en el acceso al conocimiento, al financiamiento y a las herramientas necesarias para innovar y desarrollarnos plenamente. Por eso reiteramos la necesidad de acciones concretas, más cooperación, transferencia de tecnología en condiciones justas y un verdadero compromiso con el financiamiento para el desarrollo. Señora Presidenta, debemos hablar con franqueza. En ocasiones estas brechas se ven agravadas por acciones deliberadas, como cuando se imponen al margen de toda norma del derecho internacional medidas coercitivas unilaterales que afectan directamente la capacidad de nuestros países para avanzar en ciencia, tecnología e innovación. En el caso de nuestro país, al que se le aplican más de 1.000 llamadas sanciones, ello ha resultado en limitaciones al acceso a tecnología, financiamiento y cooperación internacional. Aún así, no nos hemos detenido y no nos detendremos. Venezuela ha venido impulsando iniciativas para apoyar con especial énfasis a nuestra juventud. Si queremos pasar de la inclusión digital a la innovación real, debemos dar cabida a las condiciones que permitan a nuestros jóvenes imaginar, crear y emprender sin barreras. Muchas gracias, señora Presidenta.
I thank the distinguished representative of Venezuela, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Timor-Leste, followed by Austria and Mexico.
Madam Moderator, Timor-Leste welcomes this joint special meeting and thank the panelists for their insightful contributions. Timor-Leste aligns itself with the statement delivered by Malawi on behalf of LDCs. Allow us to highlight the following points in our national capacity. For small island developing states and least developed countries like mine, the transition from digital inclusion to youth innovation-driven entrepreneurship is not merely aspirational, it is urgent development imperative. And yet, there is another reality. One is equally important. As highlighted during the 2026 ECOSOC Forum, Youth Forum, young people are not waiting for perfect conditions. They are already innovating within their communities, often with minimal resources and limited institutional support. The question before us, therefore, is not whether youth can innovate, but whether our systems are prepared to support them at scale. This brings us to three interrelated priorities. First, digital access must evolve into digital capability. Connectivity alone is not enough. We must invest in affordable and reliable internet, yes, but also in digital literacy, digital public goods, and community-based innovation ecosystems. Second, youth entrepreneurship must be recognized as a strategic pathway for development. Third, science, technology, innovation must be firmly aligned with national priorities and the Sustainable Development Goals. For seeds and LDCs, this alignment is particularly critical. Technologies can advance climate adaptation, sustainable agriculture, digital health, and circular economic solutions that are not optional, but they are essential. Timor-Leste stands ready to work with all partners to advance inclusive, resilient, and innovation-driven futures grounded in opportunity, powered by youth, and sustained through partnership. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Timor-Leste, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Austria, followed by Mexico and Kenya.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Let me thank the panelists for their thoughtful insights. Austria fully aligns with the EU statement, and please allow me to deliver some remarks in my national capacity, as Austria is, together with Zambia, co-chairing the STI Forum, which will start tomorrow. Science, technology, and innovation are essential drivers for sustainable development, but many challenges like limited infrastructure, constrained funding, or persisting digital divides remain, especially in developing countries. But where there is a challenge, there is an opportunity. International cooperation and partnerships play a crucial role in leveraging the full potential of STI. Austria builds genuine partnerships through programs like the Austrian Partnership Program in Higher Education and Research for Development, or Africa UniNet, to strengthen higher education and research development, as well as cooperation networks between Austrian and African universities and research institutions. Austria also supports the EU's Global Gateway Initiative to foster investments in emerging markets. And through the global network of regional sustainable energy centers, we support the expansion of sustainable energy, particularly in SIDS and in Africa. Many places still lack reliable and sustainable energy, an issue that will also be addressed during the STI Forum. Local expertise and innovations of the Global South must be part of the global STI agenda. The young innovators present are proof of immense innovative power. The implementation of our multilateral commitments is key to ensure that everyone can benefit from the opportunities of science, technology, and innovation. And Austria remains a steadfast partner in this endeavor, and I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Austria, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Mexico, followed by Kenya and Algeria.
Gracias, señora presidenta. México considera que un reto fundamental para los países en desarrollo es transformar el acceso digital en capacidades productivas, innovación y bienestar sostenible. La conectividad por sí sola no garantiza inclusión económica. Por ello, la política pública en México se articula en torno a tres ejes: el fortalecimiento de la soberanía tecnológica, la digitalización orientada al bienestar social y la construcción de capacidades nacionales. En línea con esa visión, México ha creado nuevas instancias en materia digital, científica y tecnológica y ha fortalecido el desarrollo de infraestructura estratégica y capacidades en inteligencia artificial. Desde esta perspectiva, México concibe la inteligencia artificial como una tecnología habilitadora de carácter estratégico, cuyo desarrollo, adopción y gobernanza deben estar orientados al bienestar de las personas, la reducción de desigualdades y el cumplimiento de los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible. Asimismo, México subraya que la conectividad debe estar acompañada de formación pertinente, acceso a financiamiento, infraestructura digital pública, innovación local y marcos de gobernanza tecnológica centrados en las personas. En el plano internacional, este enfoque requiere fortalecer la cooperación internacional incluyendo esquemas sur-sur y triangulares, la transferencia de tecnología y el intercambio de conocimiento, y el acceso equitativo a infraestructura digital como componente del financiamiento para el desarrollo. La meta es avanzar de la conectividad a la productividad digital con inclusión mediante políticas públicas integrales, una visión que se encuentra plenamente alineada con el Pacto Digital Global, el Compromiso de Sevilla y la Agenda de Financiamiento para el Desarrollo. Muchas gracias.
I thank the distinguished representative of Mexico, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Kenya, followed by Algeria and Israel.
Thank you, Excellencies, panelists. Kenya thanks the Presidents of General Assembly and ECOSOC for convening this important joint meeting, and thanks the panelists for their insightful discussion. Science, technology, and innovation are essential accelerators for achieving Agenda 2030, especially SDG 4, SDG 8, and SDG 9, and for enabling developing countries to participate meaningfully in the digital economy. However, many countries continue to face structural barriers that limit their ability to fully harness the benefits of STI. These challenges include persistent digital divides in connectivity and infrastructure, limited access to affordable financing for innovation ecosystems, gaps in technical and advanced digital skills, and equal participation in global technology governance processes, and constraints related to technology transfer and access to emerging technologies. At the same time, important opportunities do exist. For developing countries, STI offers pathways to accelerate structural transformation, strengthen climate resilience, improve agricultural productivity, expand access to quality education and healthcare. In Kenya's case, STI is central to our national development strategy through the digital economy blueprint, expansion of broadband connectivity, strengthening of innovation hubs, and investment in STEM education and digital skills. With more than 75% of Kenya's population below the age of 35, youth remain cornerstone of.
I thank the distinguished representative of Kenya, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Algeria, followed by Israel and the Russian Federation.
Excellencies, dear colleagues, in a global context marked by widening inequalities and rapid technological change, developing countries, especially in Africa, continue to face structural constraints that limit their ability to harness science, technology, and innovation as drivers of sustainable development. At the same time, these challenges present important opportunities. Africa's young and growing population represent a major asset for innovation. My country is firmly committed to advancing this agenda. Algeria has built one of the most dynamic startup ecosystems in the continent, hosting the highest number of startups in Africa. From 200 in 2019 to 13,000 in 2025, with projections to reach 20,000 by 2029. This momentum is supported by a dedicated institutional framework, notably the Ministry of Knowledge Economy, Startups, and Micro-Enterprises. Algeria also places strong emphasis on embedding innovation within its university system. To date, 124 incubators have been established across higher education and research institutions, engaging nearly 60,000 students in projects from startup creation to patent application. This dynamic has already led to the creation of over 1,600 micro-enterprises. Algeria has also positioned itself as a regional hub for innovation dialogue, hosting 4 editions of the African Startup Conference in Algiers. However, national efforts must be complemented by reinforced international cooperation. Bridging the technological divide requires equitable access to finance, enhanced capacity building, and effective technology transfer. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Algeria, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Israel, followed by Russian Federation and Latvia.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Israel has championed this cause through our biannual resolution on entrepreneurship for development, due to be presented in the Second Committee's upcoming session. The resolution reflects a core conviction that entrepreneurship is one of the most powerful drivers of inclusive economic transformation and of the achievement of the SDGs. We welcome today's focus on this principle. Israel has one of the world's highest R&D to GDP ratios, with a dynamic innovation ecosystem spanning fields from agri-tech and medical diagnostics to quantum computing and space technologies. This is the direct outcome of sustained investment in entrepreneurship, including government R&D grants to early-stage firms and linkages between academia, civil society, the private sector, and public institutions. These investments extend to the next generation. The Ministry of Education recently launched two major national initiatives, a STEM education reform and a youth entrepreneurship initiative developed jointly with the Israel Innovation Authority. These government efforts are complemented by civil society programs which connect young people, including from rural areas, with entrepreneurial training and mentorship. Israel shares its experiences internationally through Mashav, Israel's aid agency, which offers entrepreneurship programs to professionals from developing countries, including courses on startup ecosystems, business labs, and the economic empowerment of women and girls. Israel stands ready to ensure that young people everywhere can participate in and drive the innovation economy. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Israel, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Russian Federation, followed by Latvia and Albania.
Уважаемые коллеги, Российская Федерация отмечает особую важность межправительственного сотрудничества в области науки и технологий. Взаимодействие государств в этой сфере может стать прагматичной инвестицией в налаживание устойчивых связей и расширение экономических возможностей участвующих сторон. Доступ к современным технологиям и научным данным является критическим фактором для социально-экономического развития и преодоления неравенства. К сожалению, многие страны, в первую очередь относящиеся к глобальному югу, все еще не имеют устойчивого доступа к современным технологиям. В данной связи выступаем за создание открытой, справедливой и недискриминационной научной среды. Считаем, что достижению этой цели могут весомо способствовать профильные механизмы системы ООН, Комиссия по науке и технике в целях развития и стартующий завтра многосторонний форум по науке, технологиям и инновациям. Подчеркиваем значимость науки для достижения ЦУР. Выступаем за продолжение международного взаимодействия в рамках ООН для оказания содействия развивающимся государствам в укреплении их кадрового потенциала, расширении исследовательских программ, совершенствовании страновой научной базы. Особо подчеркнем, односторонние принудительные меры должны быть исключены из международной практики. Уделяем пристальное внимание развитию молодежного предпринимательства, которое способствует созданию созидательных инициатив и социальных лифтов. Соответствующие программы широко реализуются у нас в стране по линии Федерального агентства по делам молодежи. В апреле этого года государства-члены имели возможность ознакомиться с ними в рамках молодежного форума под эгидой ЭКОСОС. Благодарю за внимание.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Latvia, followed by Albania.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Distinguished panelists, Excellencies, Latvia aligns with the statement delivered by the EU and wishes to make the following remarks in its national capacity. We thank the Presidents of the General Assembly and Economic and Social Council for convening this joint special meeting on a highly relevant subject and for spotlighting the role of youth in driving innovation. The discussion have been very insightful. Wishing best of luck for the innovators that have pitched their ideas. Madam Chair, science, technology, and innovation are drivers for sustainable development and prosperity. Advancing STI and digital skills is critically important to embrace and unleash their potential. This recognition is reflected in our policies at home, as well as in Latvia's development cooperation initiatives. We are proud to share that in 2025, over 60% of Latvia's supported initiatives promote STEM and tech education, digital and entrepreneurial skills, as well as empower women and girls across Africa, Central Asia, and Eastern neighborhood of the European Union. By promoting results sustainability through train-the-trainees approaches and development of alumni networks, we hope to encourage the development of local self-sustaining capacities for promoting STEM, digital skills, and entrepreneurship. In time of rapid technological change and scientific advancement, skills development is not a one-off activity. Lifelong learning attitude is also something that needs to be nurtured by policymakers, schools, and peers alike. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Latvia, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Albania. After the distinguished representative of Albania speaks, we will come back to the panel, and then the remaining member state and civil society speakers on the list will be the very first to be given the floor after the second panel discussion. Albania, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. We strongly believe that empowering youth through innovation is a strategic necessity for building resilient, inclusive, and future-ready societies. Albania is advancing from digital inclusion to innovation by integrating technology in education, enhancing e-services, and fostering youth entrepreneurship, aiming to build a modern and competitive economy. Key initiatives include the Albania Digital Agenda Strategy and the establishment of 216 education smart labs and the creation of youth innovation centers to support startups. We think that one of the most significant barriers for young entrepreneurs remains the access to finance. To address this, we are exploring innovative financing models, including blended finance and public-private partnerships, to reduce risk and crowd in investments for youth-led ventures, particularly in high-impact sectors aligned with sustainable development. In this regard, I would like to pose a question. Maybe we can also address during the second panel, but I would like to ask the distinguished panelists if they can explore a little bit on the way of how and what innovative alternative funding mechanisms can be deployed to bypass traditional bank lending requirements and specifically serve youth-led enterprises. Equally important in our view is ensuring that innovative ecosystems are inclusive. Another question that I may pose in this regard is how can we effectively address the structural barriers that limit the participation of young women, rural youth, and other underrepresented groups. And finally, we see international cooperation as critical. Sharing best practices, scaling successful models, and aligning efforts with global frameworks will be key to accelerating progress. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Albania. And now we come back to the panel for their final wrap-up and response to questions or comments from the floor. I will turn first of all to Professor Nagila for her final remarks.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My highlights for us to be able to solve the problem of gender and youth equality, particularly entrepreneurship, as well as digital advancement. We have to invest in infrastructure because that is one of the biggest problems we have in Global South. Access to finance. We also have weak intellectual property rights. Digital inequality, neglecting indigenous knowledge, data insufficiency, and networking. Global South, Global North. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Nagila. I now turn for his final remarks to His Excellency Ambassador Tamsar.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And indeed, a very rich discussion, and many of you underscored the persistence of structural barriers and limited connectivity, slow and insufficient financing, unequal access to knowledge and tools were mentioned, as well as the importance of right-based, people-centered and locally owned approaches.
At the same time, we also heard compelling examples from many of you of how investing in digital skills, empowering youth as entrepreneurs and agents of change, and fostering inclusive innovation ecosystems can turn potential into progress. As co-chairs of a first global dialogue on AI governance, we, of course, sincerely hope with my co-chair, Ambassador Lopez, that you will bring these examples to the global dialogue so that we can share best practices and lessons learned there. And this is why this platform was created, first of all. What has emerged clearly, I would say, and which we have also heard in our consultations, is that digital inclusion is not an end in itself, but the foundation for sustainable development, resilience, innovation, and shared prosperity. And I think this is something that I would like to take with me from this discussion for the dialogue, what we are still trying to shape. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Tamsa. And last but not least, Elliot, for your final remarks.
Thank you very much, Ursula. And thank you to all the delegates for this very rich conversation and comments. Just want to maybe just to make 2 points. One, to echo what Ambassador Tamsar has said about sharing best practices and lessons learned. We heard a lot of very interesting examples and practical policies and activities that have been put in place at the national level, sometimes also global level or regional levels. So we definitely would benefit from having that and during the dialogue on AI, but I would say even beyond for the UN system to benefit from that. That's number one. I want to just also thank all the delegates who emphasize the importance of education, STEM education, digital skills. As I said in my remarks, this is essential. And I want just to emphasize the importance to invest in education at a time where we see some reorientation of budgets. I want just to reiterate the importance of continuing investing in education. This is absolutely essential. And last point, still related to education, I think some of the delegates mentioned also and the panelists mentioned the need to match the education, the skills with the job markets. This is absolutely essential, particularly with the emerging technologies and the impact that these technologies will have on the job market. For this, just 2 or 3 ideas. One is the need to partner with the private sector, and we do that at UNESCO. We partner with the tech firms, for example, to develop together the skills that are needed for the job market. That's number one. Number two, the importance of investing on technical and vocational education, TVET. It is very important to do that, and the impact is immediate. Last but not least on this, just to inform you that there will be a conference in Paris at UNESCO headquarters as a follow-up to the Transforming Education Summit that was held here at the UN 4 years ago. That will be a follow-up of the summit that was part of the Pact for the Future. It will bring together ministers of education from around the world, and these topics will be addressed at least through the lenses of education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elliot. Please join me in thanking our distinguished speakers and all the wonderful remarks and comments from the floor, and we will switch over to the next session. So I now invite up to the podium our next speakers, who will be Dr. Felipe Paulier, UN ASG for Youth Affairs, Ms. Ari Moon, Korea Foundation for Women in Science, Engineering and Technology, and Mr. Anjani Puyal, founder and CEO of Genies Solution. We'll just pause for a few moments to allow them to come up. Thank you. So we now shift focus to the second panel discussion on youth innovation in action, creating enabling environments, advancing skills, and leveraging finance. The panel will address the critical shift from digital inclusion as an end in itself to STI-driven youth entrepreneurship as a driver of transformation. It will examine how young people can be supported with skills, digital tools, and financing to leverage science, technology, and innovation for entrepreneurship. We have an hour and a bit for this panel discussion, and we'll begin with 15 minutes of presentations, followed by a 5-minute youth innovation lightning talk with young innovators from across the globe. We will then open the floor for open discussion and interventions from the floor, followed by a final wrap-up from the panelists. So with that, I now give the floor to our first speaker, Dr. Felipe Paulier, UNASG for Youth Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and thank you, President of ECOSOC, and also the President of the General Assembly for convening this discussion today, which is, of course, a very critical one. And I have to say that it's always a pleasure to be at the side of the President of ECOSOC, that has been, during the whole of his mandate, a strong supporter to put an emphasis in terms of the youth agenda within the role of the Economic and Social Council. In the preparation of this intervention, I received 2 questions. One was in relation to how we can have integrated policies across different sectors, from educational systems to financing mechanisms and potential partnerships opportunities to empower young people, with a special emphasis on marginalized groups and young women. And another question more in connection to which would be 3 recommendations when it's about ensuring that young people are considered partners when we are talking about science, technology, and innovation, and the promotion of entrepreneurship. So I will try to respond those 2 questions in a short way. So my first reflection will be that digital inclusion, when we're talking about these topics, is definitely essential, but it's not longer sufficient. So I think that the real transformation is a cultural shift in the way we engage young people when we're talking about science, technology, and innovation, where sometimes our institutions engage youth as users of technology, and we are losing a big piece in terms of their capacity to innovate, to create, and to drive solutions if we really work with young people as real partners in terms of development and especially digital innovation. So how to move into this cultural shift implies that we have a whole of system approach in which national science, innovation strategies, education and skill development frameworks are really working with youth as partners. And if we fail in this alignment, what I believe that will continue to happen is that our efforts continue to be fragmented and the impact continues to be limited, which I believe it's why we are here also, and why the President of ECOSOC and the President of the General Assembly have convened this discussion. No? And just to wrap up, if I have to bring 3 concrete actions in terms of driving this transformation, I would say that the first one would be really the institutionalization of youth engagement when it's about decision-making spaces, when we're talking about governance at the national but also at the global level in terms of digital innovation, science and technology. It will be really understanding that young people are not only early adopters of technology, but they're actually the ones that could help us to shape and to drive the safeguards in terms of being able to respond to this emerging and transforming an uncertain world when we're talking about technology, putting at the center also alignment when it's about human rights, inclusion, and sustainable development perspectives. The second has to do also with understanding that we need to have investment in ecosystems and not just isolated initiatives if we want to have long-term transformations when we talk about these discussions, no? And this means that also the national frameworks we propose for these ecosystems are also connected to the global and regional innovation systems, and that's why also this discussion today is so pertinent and so critical when we think about the UN as that convener. And maybe the last and important final point here is that we require not only an intersectional but also a whole of society partnership approach, because none of the challenges when we're talking about science, technology, and innovation can be addressed by one single actor, no? And of course, governments convened in this UN system set the direction and they create trust in the system, but we need the private sector when it's about investments, when it's about scale and the technology, and we need also the academia bringing together the knowledge, the skills, and of course, and the driving agency of youth when it's about creativeness, urgency, and solutions, not only grounded in data analysis and science, but also grounded in lived experiences, which are a very critical dimension when we're talking about any of these topics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ASG Polier. And now give the floor to Ms. Ari Moon, Korea Foundation for Women in Science, Engineering, and Technology.
Thank you, moderator. It is my great pleasure and honor to speak in this meaningful session. We all know that young people today are more eager than ever to innovate. But we have to face a hard truth. Starting a business is one thing, but keeping it alive is a complete different story. In Korea, the 7-year survival rate for startups led by young youth under the age of 30 is only 15.7%. This tells us that a sustainable ecosystem comes from wise preparation and long-term vision rather than mere hasty encouragement. We must gather our wisdom to minimize trial and error through the following 3 focused strategies. First, we must transform our universities into innovation hubs. As a professor at a university for over 30 years, I have witnessed not only the immense potential of young students, but the unique hesitation they feel when facing the risks of entrepreneurship. I believe that startup activities during school years are priceless experience, regardless of the eventual business success. By identifying market demand and refining business models, students face real-world problems that lead to powerful self-directed learning. I would like to introduce a leading example of KAIST, one of the top research universities in Korea. They have a vision called One Lab, One Startup. Through their Lab Startup KAIST program, research labs are directly matched with venture capitals and mentors. Crucially, universities must also provide practical business literacy in education, teaching students the essentials of law, accounting, and labor relations. This is how we turn academic research into real market success. Second, we need integrated policies based on a mid to long-term roadmap. Support should not be a one-time grant. It must cover the entire journey from the lab to the global market. This is especially critical for women. OECD reports show that 70% of missing entrepreneurs are women, and they are 25% less likely to receive bank loans than men. At WISET, where I serve as president, we turn our national roadmap into action. Since 2020, we reached over 1,000 innovators, offering one-to-one technical coach from experienced senior female entrepreneurs and market validation with potential customers to ensure their ideas are commercially ready. By tailoring this support to their specific expertise and startup stage, we significantly increase the success rate of our women innovators. Ultimately, a sustainable roadmap is essential to ensure that short-term support leads to long-term business survival. Third, we must build multi-stakeholder partnerships to drive social values like climate action, human rights, and gender equality. Young innovators today are not just seeking profit. They want to solve a global crisis, but they cannot do it alone. We need strong partnerships between the government, private sector, and international organizations to support sectors like assistive technology and femtech, a term combining female and technology and refers to products and services related to women's health and everyday life. Crucially, we need a public-private partnership to redefine failure. Governments cannot erase the social stigma of failure alone. We need a collaborative ecosystem where public sector archives the lessons from failed ventures and the private sector recognizes these failed founders as battle-tested leaders with valuable crisis management skills. When the experience of failure is treated as a professional asset in the labor market, we create an innovation safety net that encourages youth to take bold risks for the common good. Inclusive innovation is a journey we all take together. Let's remember, supporting youth innovation is not about pushing them to start. It is about providing the tools to sustain. If we support the whole journey, from youth, first spark of an idea to global stages, we can ensure that young innovators do not just start, but actually lead the digital age. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Moon. We now pass the floor to Mr. Anjani Puyal, founder and CEO of Genies Solution.
Hello, everyone. Namaste. I'm Anjani Puyal, CEO of Genies Solution. I'm originally born and brought up in Nepal, and I have been living in UK from last 16 years. I wanted to share this experience because I've grown professionally in the Western world, where digitization has reached its very peak. But then I started working back in Nepal, where a lot of fundamentals hasn't grown. Now, it is not just Nepal. Now, as a company, we work across very many countries in Africa. Recently, I was on a tour to a couple of countries, including Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, Ivory Coast, and I've been actively talking in Somalia as well. So what I realized is there are a few fundamental challenges which I would like to highlight. Adding to what Philip and Ari Moon earlier mentioned, very great insight on the private-public partnerships, similarly the university innovation lab ideas as well. So the current problem statement is we don't have a youth innovation problem. We have a system design problem. Over the past decade, we have made significant progress in digital inclusion. I'm not saying it is enough. There is yet so much to be done as well. More young people are connected, more are educated, more are digitally aware than ever before. But inclusion was never an end goal. It was a starting point. I think we have probably started into point one. Innovation doesn't scale through ideas, it is scaled through systems. The real question is, are young people actually participating in the global economy? Especially with AI evolution coming into picture, every morning when I wake up, I hear a very scary scenario where 80–90% of the jobs are not going to be relevant anymore. How are we going to enable our workforce? Be it educated workforce, be it those workforce who are under-skilled as well. Because across many developing countries, we don't lack talent, we lack systems that convert that talent into real economic output. In my view, enabling youth innovation requires 4 things to work together. It obviously needs to be working very closely in a tightly integrated way and not in an isolation. Number 1, infrastructure. Today, innovation runs on cloud, data, and increasingly AI. Without access to this layer, young people are competing locally in a global game. What I have seen, access to technology in African countries, in South Asian countries, in a lot of these territories, it's still a big challenge because these global services are paid in global currencies, and having access to those currencies in the local environment is very, very challenging itself. And access today also means access to some of the freely available platforms in the global scale, such as cloud credits, for example, accessible AI platforms, for example. Without that, innovation cannot even start in the current landscape. The second point is skills. We have overinvested in training and underinvested in deployment. Young people are learning, but they are not earning. And that is actually creating huge frustration and challenge as well. How can we convert and transform this learning of knowledge into real economic output in the form of earning? And if we are not careful, we risk creating a generation that is trained, connected, but economically excluded. The third point is market access. Talent is global, but opportunities is still local. When talent connects to real international demand, skill turn into income, and innovation starts to scale. We have seen this in practice. When young professionals start working on real global digital workload, learning turns into income almost immediately. It mitigates a lot of issues like migration. People can earn from wherever they are as well. Now the last point is capital, which again has been mentioned by previous speakers as well. It's not that capital doesn't exist. It definitely exists, but it rarely follows early execution in emerging markets. The issue is not access to capital. It's capital that doesn't follow real demand. We need funding model tied to execution, not just ideas, but real usage and real outcomes. And here is the real gap. Infrastructure, skill, market access, and capital all exist, but they exist in a isolated and silos. That's why innovation doesn't scale. One typical example, again reflecting back to Nepal, ever since I know, the interest rate has been one of the lowest, but the banks cannot deploy the capital. That's a fundamental policy challenge. Because again, innovation doesn't scale through ideas, it scales through systems. So talking about the shift, so the shift we need is this: from supporting individual startups to building systems and platforms that enable thousands of young people to participate. 3 critical actions, if I had to highlight: ensure access to technology, move from education to application, connect talent to global demand, align capital with execution. Again, local to global. The opportunity is not just to train talent, but to enable digital exports to allow young people to build, serve, and earn globally while staying locally rooted. Youth innovation does not fail because of lack of ideas. It fails because systems are not designed for scale. If we get this right, the next generation won't wait for opportunity. They will build it there and then. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Puyal. We now move to a special segment where we're going to have a youth innovator who is going to provide an elevator pitch of their work. This sounds really, really exciting. So I would like to invite to the lectern here Mr. Masaki Umeda, who's from Kenya and Japan.
Transforming lives from the sky, turning environmental sensing data into actionable intelligence for climate adaptation in developing countries. It's a great honor and great pleasure to have this great opportunity here. My name is Masaki Umeda. I'm Deputy CEO and Director from Sora Technology Japan. Today, I'd like to introduce one of the flagship projects called Sora Health Intelligence Room. This project is integrating drone sensing data, satellite data, and hydrological modeling to generate climate risk forecasts. It also identifies some potentially high-risk hotspots linked to flooding and climate-sensitive infectious diseases such as malaria, cholera, and others. Our strengths, in particular, lies on providing actionable list in addition to prediction accuracy itself. For example, we can help the local community health workers on ground understand when and where the actions will be needed with what kind of intervention, from wash-related sensitization for the communities against diarrheal diseases into some proactive proportioning of vector control tools against malaria and other mosquito-borne diseases. Today, we operate over 10 African countries, starting from Kenya and Ghana, expanding more in cooperation mainly with UN agencies such as WHO, UNICEF, UNDP, and so on. We aim to redefine conventional public health system from reactive response into anticipatory, climate-informed, data-driven action that scale through the partnership. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Umeda. Mr. Umeda, that was very inspiring. We will now open the floor for interventions from member states and stakeholders. Those who wish to speak are invited to press the microphone button now. We do have our list from earlier, so we will refer to those first. And just as a reminder, there is an automatic shut-off on the microphone, and there's a timer there, and the light on the microphone will flash to assist the speaker to know when the time is running out. So with that, I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Sudan, followed by Lesotho and Namibia.
Madam Moderator, Excellencies, Sudan welcomes this joint special meeting, commence this timely dialogue, and align itself with the statement delivered on behalf of the LDCs. Youth represents our most powerful and underutilized resource for economic transformation, yet young people are nearly 3 times more likely to be unemployed than adults, particularly in developing and least developed countries. They face persistent barriers to finance, digital tools, and skills. Financing is central to this shift. Youth-led enterprises are too often locked out of traditional financial systems. Sudan reiterates the importance for targeted blended financial mechanisms, including venture capital and development finance, a finance which is adapted to the realities of young entrepreneurs in developing countries. On the other hand, the transformative potential of STI remains profoundly uneven. Developing countries continue to face gaps in regulatory and institutional capacity, limited digital infrastructure, constrained access to high-performance computing, and persistent shortage in STEM skills. Sudan recognizes the significant opportunities which digital technologies are opening for developing countries to participate in the global economy with enabling policies, targeted investment in skills and innovation ecosystems. Although strengthening multilateral cooperation, this transformation can drive inclusive growth. Sudan stands ready to work with all partners to build inclusive innovation ecosystems that leave no young person behind. When youth are equipped with the right tools and support, they became not just beneficiaries of development, but its most powerful architect. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Sudan, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Lesotho, followed by Namibia.
Thank you, moderator, and allow me to thank the speakers for the valuable insights shared. Lesotho comes to this discussion with humility, to learn from peers, but also with a clear commitment to ensure that science, technology, and innovation become practical tools for improving lives. Guided by the AWASA Program of Action and African Union frameworks, we are working to translate policy into implementation. We have begun piloting digital identity systems as part of our digital public infrastructure agenda to enable trusted and inclusive access to services. We are cooperating with UNDP on STEAM programs to strengthen skills for young people, and through Sibabazo, an innovation initiative led by the Right Honorable the Prime Minister, we are creating space for Basotho innovators to turn ideas into solutions. For countries such as Lesotho, an LDC and LLDC, the challenges are real. Poverty, unemployment, rural isolation, climate vulnerability, and high connectivity costs, as well as skills. That is why our ambition is 100% meaningful connectivity, supported by DPI and innovation ecosystems and partnerships. Lesotho is ready to learn, ready to contribute, and ready to be recognized as a committed partner in using STI to advance inclusive and sustainable development. I thank you.
Thank you very much to the distinguished representative of Lesotho. And I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Namibia, followed by Peru.
President, Madam Moderator, dear panelists, thank you for the convening of this important dialogue. Namibia remains committed to ensuring digital inclusion, improving access to technologies for its citizens, strengthening digital literacy, and expanding affordable connectivity. Our government recently launched its national digital strategy with a view to ensuring that the country is digitally empowered with universal connectivity, leveraging technology as a key driver for economic growth, for the benefit of all our people, in particular the youth. Our youth constitute the largest and most dynamic segment of our population. And when they're empowered with the right skills, tools, and enabling policy environment, they become innovators, job creators, and solution providers rather than job seekers alone. In this regard, Namibia is investing in STEM education, technical and vocational training, innovation hubs, and startup ecosystems that link young entrepreneurs with mentorship, finance, and markets. Our government launched the National Youth Development Fund in September 2025 to enable youth to become builders of businesses, creators of jobs, and drivers of innovation. However, innovation cannot thrive in isolation alone. Developing countries continue to face persistent structural barriers and gaps in infrastructure and technology transfer. We therefore underscore the importance of international cooperation, public-private partnerships, and South-South collaboration to ensure that no country or region is left behind, as articulated in the Pact for the Future Annex of Global Digital Compact. Namibia stands ready to work with all partners to translate digital inclusion into meaningful innovation and innovation into sustainable development outcomes.
I thank the distinguished representative of Namibia, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Peru, followed by Azerbaijan.
Señor Presidente, en el Perú, los jóvenes representan cerca del 25% de la población. Esta proporción evidencia su enorme potencial transformador en los procesos digitales, así como su creciente impacto económico y social. En ese contexto, resulta fundamental promover su participación para afrontar los desafíos del futuro, particularmente en ámbitos de alto impacto como la es la ciencia, la tecnología y la innovación. Con ese objetivo, el Perú promueve el emprendimiento juvenil y el desarrollo de capacidades en CTI mediante 4 iniciativas concretas. La primera, a través de programas como ProInnovate, se fomenta la innovación y el emprendimiento mediante financiamiento y asistencia técnica. Asimismo, por medio del Consejo Nacional de Ciencia, Tecnología e Innovación Tecnológica, se fortalece la promoción en áreas STEAM. En el ámbito académico, se consolidan ecosistemas de innovación mediante incubadoras y espacios de co-creación con universidades, y en el marco de la cooperación sur-sur y de iniciativas regionales como la Alianza del Pacífico, se promueve el intercambio de experiencias y el fortalecimiento del liderazgo juvenil en la región. Señor presidente, a pesar de los avances alcanzados, reconocemos que, como país de renta media, persisten barreras estructurales que aún limitan la plena participación de las juventudes en el entorno digital. En ese sentido, el Perú reafirma la importancia de fortalecer la cooperación internacional y las alianzas con el sistema de las Naciones Unidas, el sector privado y la academia, con el fin de promover entornos inclusivos que potencien el rol de las juventudes como actores relevantes en la economía digital y el desarrollo sostenible. Muchas gracias.
I thank the distinguished representative of Peru, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Azerbaijan, followed by Poland.
Thank you. Would like to thank the panelists for their insightful remarks. Mr. President, digital access has grown significantly. However, structural gaps in finance and skills remain a major hurdle for developing nations. Consequently, Azerbaijan has placed human capital and innovation at the heart of our Azerbaijan 2030 strategy to ensure technology drives inclusive growth. We have shifted the focus from young people as mere technology users to creators of value. Through our national innovation hubs and incubation programs, we provide the mentorship and seed funding necessary for youth to scale their ideas. Azerbaijan is expanding STEM education through our national STEAM project, which now reaches hundreds of schools and thousands of students. By strengthening university-industry linkages and technology parks, we're ensuring the next generation is equipped for the jobs of tomorrow. As a part of our commitment to the COP29 presidency, initiatives and legacy, we champion the role of youth in the green digital transition and scale initiatives born from the presidency, specifically those focused on youth-led climate resilience and smart agriculture. Our international Green STEAM festivals serve as a platform where young innovators develop practical solutions for renewable energy and decarbonization, ensuring that the momentum of the COP29 translates into sustainable youth-led enterprises. Our commitment to the UN digital transformation is also realized through Azerbaijan's International Development Agency, which supports inclusive digital education for all, including students with disabilities. Azerbaijan views AI as both a transformative opportunity and collective responsibility. We're integrating AI into public services while strengthening ethical governance frameworks. Our approach ensures that the youth and women are not just beneficiaries, but
I thank the distinguished representative of Azerbaijan, and I now give the floor to distinguished representative of Poland, followed by Colombia.
Madam Moderator, we thank the President of ECOSOC for convening this important special meeting of the Council. Poland attaches great importance to the full and meaningful inclusion of youth in the economic and social life, and STI as a clear accelerator towards this goal. In such a dynamically changing world as ours, it is necessary to adapt educational approaches to ensure that younger generations are well equipped to meet the challenges of tomorrow. As part of national efforts towards the implementation of SDG 4, the Ministry of National Education of Poland is carrying out a curriculum reform called Compass of Tomorrow. Its aim is, among others, to develop entrepreneurship and civic skills among young people, encompassing areas such as climate, media, culture, and economy. Poland stands ready to share our experience with interested partners. But the youth engagement, as it was said, cannot be limited to education alone. We see great potential for further involving young people in international cooperation, and let me provide one concrete example of youth leadership in international processes related to new technologies that can be utilized.
Poland encourages greater involvement of young people within the global Internet Governance Forum framework, especially those from underrepresented states and communities. We should raise awareness of young people that they can have real impact on internet and digital governance. Young people must be treated as fully fledged stakeholders in internet governance. IGF Poland already applies this multi-stakeholder model in which the youth participate alongside public authorities, business representatives, and experts. As part of IGF Poland, there are many formats aimed specifically at young audiences. A youth track, youth roundtable, and the standalone initiative Youth IGF Poland enable young participants not only to take part in debates, but also to formulate their own recommendations on digital policy and pass them on to national and European institutions. We hope that this idea of fully securing the youth track in the renewed permanent IGF will allow the youth not only to advance their skills, but also to anchor their leadership in the discussions about the future.
I thank the distinguished representative of Poland, and I pass the floor to the distinguished representative of Colombia, followed by India.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Colombia valora este espacio como una oportunidad para reflexionar sobre cómo avanzar de la inclusión digital a la innovación como motor del desarrollo sostenible, reconociendo que para los países en desarrollo esta transición no ocurre automáticamente. La inclusión digital es un punto de partida esencial, pero insuficiente. El acceso debe convertirse en capacidades, la conectividad en habilidades y estas en oportunidades reales de innovación, emprendimiento y trabajo decente, especialmente para las juventudes. En este contexto, Colombia subraya que la inclusión efectiva de las y los jóvenes en el ecosistema digital requiere políticas públicas integrales que garanticen condiciones reales para beneficiarse de las oportunidades económicas y educativas que ofrecen las nuevas tecnologías. Esto implica asegurar entornos digitales incluyentes en términos de lenguas, asequibilidad, acceso, igualdad de género y desarrollo de habilidades, así como establecer salvaguardas sólidas para prevenir el acoso, el abuso y la explotación en línea. Este enfoque se inscribe en la visión del presidente de Colombia, Gustavo Petro, quien ha señalado que el verdadero progreso se mide por el desarrollo humano y por la reducción de las desigualdades que hoy también se manifiestan en el acceso al conocimiento digital. Es aquí donde las juventudes son uno de nuestros mayores activos, pero enfrentan barreras persistentes, así como del desarrollo que permitan
I thank the distinguished representative of Colombia, and now pass to the distinguished representative of India, who will be followed by Nepal and Nigeria.
Thank you, Moderator. I thank the President of the General Assembly and the President of ECOSOC for convening today's meeting. This discussion comes at an important moment as we move from digital inclusion to innovation-led development driven by the youth. In developing countries, young people are not just users of technology, they're creators and entrepreneurs. For youth innovation to thrive, 3 elements are critical: enabling ecosystems, relevant skills, and access to finance. Please allow me to share some examples from my own country. First, on enabling environments. India has built a strong startup ecosystem through initiatives like Startup India, supported by incubators, the Atal Innovation Mission Labs, and university-linked accelerators that help translate ideas into viable enterprises. Second, on advancing STI skills. Gaps in STEM and digital skills remain a key constraint. Through programs such as Digital India and Skill India, and by integrating emerging technologies into education, India is equipping its youth to not only use technology, but to build it. Third, on access to finance, India has promoted blended approaches, combining public funding, credit support, and digital public infrastructure such as UPI, which lowers barriers and enables new business models. India's DPI has created a strong foundation for innovation at scale. Ultimately, youth innovation requires partnerships across government, industry, academia, and the youth themselves. India remains committed to working with partners to advance this shared agenda. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of India and now pass the floor to the distinguished representative of Nepal, followed by Nigeria.
Thank you, dear moderator. Mr. President, dear colleagues, Nepal aligns itself with the statement delivered on behalf of the group of LDCs and offers the following remarks in its national capacity. To begin with, I commend the Presidents of the General Assembly and ECOSOC for convening this special meeting and the panelists for their insightful reflections. Excellencies, Nepal's journey from digital inclusion to innovation reflects both encouraging progress and structural challenges. Guided by Digital Nepal Framework and other policy blueprints, we are leveraging digital technologies to strengthen digital economy, build a knowledge-based society, and advance sustainable development goals. Today, Nepal has achieved over 100% mobile penetration and nearly 82% internet access, while e-governance initiatives across education, health, finance, agriculture, energy, infrastructure, and other areas have strengthened good governance and enhanced efficiency in public service delivery. More importantly, digital transformation is creating new avenues for youth-led innovation and entrepreneurship. Our youths, over 40% of the population, are increasingly engaged in the ICT sector, leveraging global digital platforms, remote work opportunities, and emerging startup ecosystems. However, progress remains uneven. A persistent urban-rural digital divide, infrastructure constraints, and gaps in advanced digital and STEM skills continue to limit inclusive participation. In this context, Nepal has prioritized, first, investing in inclusive digital infrastructure to ensure meaningful connectivity for all, particularly in remote and underserved areas. Second, strengthening digital literacy and advancing STI skills through education reform, vocational training, and partnership with the private sector. Third, fostering innovation ecosystem by promoting startup incubation, research, and development, and stronger linkages between academia and industry. Fourth, leveraging strategic financing, mobilizing public and private investment, exploring blended finance, and creating enabling conditions for youth entrepreneurs to access capital and markets. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Nepal and pass the floor to the distinguished representative of Nigeria, who will be followed by the International Organization of la Francophonie.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Nigeria commends the Presidents of the General Assembly and ECOSOC for convening this important meeting to discuss how increased youth participation in science, technology, and innovation could be a driver of sustainable development. In Nigeria, there are more than 140 million people under the age of 35, the largest youth population on the African continent. They are talented, entrepreneurial, and eager. They have built and continue building fintech platforms, agri-tech solutions, and health delivery applications that are changing lives across the region. Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos, today ranks among the top 5 startup ecosystems on the continent. This is not by chance. It is the result of deliberate policy choices, private sector engagement, and the ingenuity of the Nigerian youth. Despite successes achieved, structural barriers remain. Challenges with infrastructure raise the cost of running any digital enterprise. Access to affordable broadband remains deeply unequal between cities and rural communities. And young entrepreneurs too often find that much-needed capital, which is patient and risk-tolerant, simply does not reach them. This is not a uniquely Nigerian challenge. It is faced by youth across the continent and indeed across the developing world. The digital divide is not a gap in aspiration, it is a gap in enabling environment. Important multilateral interventions such as the UNDP's Timbuktu initiative are to be commended and expanded. Nigeria wishes to recommend 3 commitments for consideration. First, there must be accelerated technology transfer under terms that genuinely serve developing countries, not merely licensor interests. Second, dedicated multilateral financing instruments for youth-led innovation distinct from general development assistance with streamlined access, especially for developed and lower middle-income countries. And third, South-South and triangular cooperation.
I thank the distinguished representative of Nigeria, and I pass the floor to the distinguished representative of the International Organization of la Francophonie.
Madame la Présidente, les technologies redéfinissent profondément nos économies et nos sociétés. Et dans ce contexte, l'inclusion numérique doit être le point de départ d'une transformation par l'innovation portée par la jeunesse au service du développement durable. Et pour l'Organisation internationale de la francophonie, cette transition suppose d'investir dans les compétences sur les métiers d'avenir, parce que sans formation adaptée, sans appropriation locale des technologies, il ne peut y avoir ni inclusion effective, ni innovation durable. Et c'est précisément l'approche que nous mettons en œuvre à travers deux initiatives phares. Tout d'abord, le projet Déclic, qui est une réponse concrète et ciblée sur la formation de masse. Ensuite, le projet Initiative CAP Action, qui vise à accompagner, financer et faire émerger les écosystèmes favorables. Les expériences que nous avons eues nous confortent à renforcer trois leviers d'action. Investir dans les compétences numériques et entrepreneuriales, faciliter l'accès au financement pour les jeunes innovateurs et soutenir les écosystèmes inclusifs ancrés dans les réalités locales. Et la francophonie va poursuivre son engagement auprès des jeunes francophones et aux côtés de ses partenaires pour faire du numérique et de l'innovation des leviers de développement durable dans les États et gouvernements de l'espace francophone. Je vous remercie.
I thank the distinguished representative of the International Organization of la Francophonie and pass the floor to the International Organization of Employers, who will be followed by Children and Youth International.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues. I'm Shay Gopal. I am the permanent representative of the International Organization of Employers. Science and technology are not abstract concepts. They are the engine of productivity, job creation, and sustainable growth. Technology adoption by firms is central to economic transformation. Yet in many developing countries, firms remain far from the technological frontier, limiting productivity and quality job creation. The challenges are clear. First, infrastructure gaps, including access to reliable electricity and affordable internet, continue to constrain digital inclusion and business expansion. Without this foundation, even the most promising innovations cannot scale. Second, there is a persistent skills mismatch evidenced by World Bank, ILO, that technical and vocational educational systems often fail to meet labor needs. And why? Because employers are not at the table working together with governments to work on digital and technical competencies. Third, governance and regulatory uncertainty creates barriers to investment, weak institutions, inconsistent policies. Informality remains widespread and limiting firm growth. However, developing countries are uniquely positioned to leapfrog legacy systems by adopting digital, technical, green solutions and new business models. The private sector has an opportunity in new and emerging industries, from digital services to climate technologies. But the demand is growing rapidly, and we must be able to get financing for.
I thank the distinguished representative of the International Organization of Employers, and I pass the floor to the distinguished representative of Children and Youth International, who will be followed by Mexico.
Good afternoon, Excellencies. My name is Yash Thadimala, and I'm honored to deliver this statement on behalf of the Major Group for Children and Youth, CYI, and the Youth Science Policy Interface. To effectively move from digital inclusion to innovation, we need to connect the core principles of meaningful youth participation with the implementation of the Global Digital Compact and its intersections with the Declaration on Future Generations. We must ensure that our technological transitions translate into tangible, equitable development outcomes on the ground for all. To ensure we maximize our collective impact, I want to share 3 key messages derived from the ECOSOC Youth Forum, the largest assembly of youth voices within the UN system, which was held in New York last month. First, we need to evolve from AI governance to intergenerational co-design and regulation. Establishing robust frameworks for emerging technologies is critical, but effective regulation requires the insights of those who are native to digital economies. Our lived experiences are essential to identifying and mitigating algorithmic bias and ensuring the various frameworks protect vulnerable populations from inadvertent harm and discrimination. We propose institutionalizing youth as active co-regulators and partners, inviting young researchers to global governance dialogues. By working together, we can ensure technology development and ecosystems promote innovation meaningfully. Second, let us advance from technology transfer to open digital public infrastructure. To achieve meaningful connectivity under the GDC, we must collaboratively scale open science, open data, and local digital public infrastructure. Third, let us rethink access to finance as a strategic research and development. As we actively engage in the outcomes of the FFD process, we see an immense opportunity to modernize funding models. Rather than viewing youth-led initiatives as high-risk endeavors.
Thank you very much to the distinguished representative of Children and Youth International, and I now pass the floor to the distinguished representative of Mexico.
Muchas gracias. México afirma que las juventudes deben ser protagonistas de la transformación digital. Por ello, el país ha evolucionado hacia un enfoque de política pública que concibe la inclusión digital como punto de partida para el desarrollo de agencia económica y productiva, particularmente entre las juventudes. Este enfoque integra los siguientes componentes fundamentales. Primero, el desarrollo de capacidades. México ha priorizado el fortalecimiento del capital humano como condición habilitadora para la participación en la economía digital. Segundo, la construcción de ecosistemas de innovación juvenil. Iniciativas como Juventudes MX y Juventudes Autogestivas para la Transformación reflejan un enfoque que articula múltiples actores, financiamiento y capacidades para fortalecer la cultura empresarial juvenil, promoviendo modelos horizontales de política pública que impulsan un papel esencial para las juventudes en el desarrollo de soluciones innovadoras para atender los retos que enfrentamos. Tercero, el acceso a financiamiento. México reconoce que este sigue siendo uno de los principales cuellos de botella para el emprendimiento juvenil, particularmente en sectores intensivos en conocimiento. Cuarto, la inclusión financiera digital debe ser un habilitador fundamental. De manera transversal, México subraya la importancia de que estos esfuerzos se desarrollen bajo un enfoque inclusivo, reconociendo que se requieren respuestas diferenciadas para cerrar brechas digitales, particularmente para jóvenes en contextos de vulnerabilidad, pueblos indígenas, mujeres, personas con discapacidad y comunidades afrodescendientes y rurales. Concluyo con una pregunta. ¿Qué oportunidades ven para impulsar el emprendimiento de las juventudes en CTI desde la ONU? Muchas gracias.
I thank the distinguished representative of Mexico, and I pass the floor to the International Association of University Professors and Lecturers, and they will be followed by the Association Manoa for Human Rights and Immigration.
Excellences, l'Association internationale des professeurs et maîtres de conférences des universités se félicite de l'année internationale de la physique quantique de l'ONU et a contribué aux travaux de l'UNESCO en introduisant le principe Quantum Safe by Design, qui est orienté vers le système de connaissances sécurisées et souveraines dès la conception des innovations. L'UPL a observé que les innovations technologiques les plus marquantes, notamment les projets d'ordinateurs quantiques, ont été réalisés par une troisième génération de jeunes physiciens post-Einstein, souvent issus de formations universitaires. Je peux citer les initiatives de l'USPL, l'Institut Polytechnique de Paris ou Startup Condela, situé en France sur le parc technologique Saclay. Malgré ces succès réalisés, encore peu de discussions normatives intergouvernementales relatives à la gouvernance des technologies quantiques très spécifiques, très non classiques, ont été très peu présentées au sein de l'ECOSOC et de l'Assemblée générale de l'ONU. C'est pourquoi l'EUPL a plaidé auprès du système des Nations Unies en faveur de l'élaboration d'une résolution différenciée d'impact numérique concernant les technologies quantiques. Il s'agit enfin d'accroître et de sécuriser les financements et les investissements dans les infrastructures IA quantiques pour les usages et les services des ODD comme l'énergie, l'eau, les matériaux et pour le futur quantique IA intelligent. Je remercie de votre attention.
I thank the distinguished representative of the International Association of University Professors and Lecturers and pass the floor to the final speaker, who is the Association Manoa for Human Rights and Immigration.
شكرا السيدات والسادة، يسعدني تمثيل رابطة معونة لحقوق الإنسان في هذا المنتدى المهم. نتحدث اليوم عن الإدماج الرقمي والابتكار، ولكننا نذكركم بأن ملايين الشباب اليمني يعيشون خارج هذه المعادلة كليا في ظل نزاع مسلح محلي وإقليمي متواصل دخل عقده الثاني دون توقف بل في توسع. إن اليمن يواجه اليوم واحدة من أشد الأزمات الإنسانية في العالم، أكثر من 21 مليون شخص بحاجة إلى مساعدة إنسانية، نصفهم تقريبا من الأطفال والشباب. البنية التحتية الرقمية شبه منعدمة في مناطق واسعة بسبب استمرار الصراع. انقطاع الكهرباء يتجاوز 18 ساعة يوميا في كثير من المحافظات، خصوصا في العاصمة عدن المؤقتة، وتغطية الإنترنت لا تتجاوز 27% من السكان وفق آخر التقديرات. الشباب اليمني الذي يشكل أكثر من 60% من السكان محروم من أدوات التعليم الرقمي ومن فرص ريادة الأعمال ومن المشاركة في الاقتصاد الرقمي العالمي. المهاجرون واللاجئون الفارون من النزاع يفقدون حتى الهوية الرقمية، ما يعيق وصولهم إلى الخدمات الأساسية. منظمتنا تدعو هذا الاجتماع إلى اتخاذ 3 إجراءات محددة. أولا، إدراج مناطق النزاع صراحة في خطط الإدماج الرقمي الأممية. ثانيا، دعم مشاريع الاتصال الطارئ وتوفير الإنترنت في كل المناطق اليمنية وخصوصا في مناطق النزوح. ثالثا، تمكين الشباب اليمني من الهوية الرقمية، والوصول إلى برامج الأعمال الرقمية الممولة أمميا. ختاما، إن الابتكار لا يبنى في فراغ، بل ولا يمكن الحديث عن مستقبل رقمي مستدام وشامل دون أن تدمج فيه من هم في قلب الأزمة. إن الشباب اليمني ليس عبئا، إنه طاقة معطلة من كل أطراف الصراع المميت في انتظار فرصة، وينتظر منكم الوقوف معه. وشكرا.
Thank you very much, distinguished representative of the Association Manoa for Human Rights and Immigration. The next part of this session is that we will conclude with the second panel discussion by asking the 3 main panelists to provide their 3-minute final reflection based on the discussion. And we will start with Mr. Fuyal.
Thank you. If I simplify what we are seeing across different countries, the core challenges come down to probably few points, including talent, capital, and policy. And the reality is all of these actually exist. From the talent perspective, young people are ready, capital is available, policy mechanism is there, it is not just updated. And another challenge is they are not connected. And what makes this even more interesting is these resources are already accessible in the global forum. For example, various multinational companies are already funding training. The latest AI technology from company Anthropic, for example, the Claude trainings are already accessible. The OpenAI training are already accessible, for example. Multinationals providing access to cloud training is already there, for example. And again, the investment is without any equity commitment, already accessible. Multinationals, they invest in the form of, let's say, the platform uses credit, or even the innovation sandbox funding and those kind of things as well. But these efforts are not yet mapped into a functioning system. And hence, a lot of member states mentioned similar kind of issues, which is globally accessible, but probably locally not accessible. And again, in many cases, policy is not fully enabling this connection, and rather than acting it as an enabler, it is acting as a blocker as well. So whether through access to infrastructure, ease of experimentation, or alignment of incentives. And without that alignment, innovation doesn't scale. The encouraging part is this is not an unknown problem. There are countries that have already gone through this journey where talent, capital, infrastructure, and policy have been aligned into a working, functioning system, which is making the growth happen. So this is not about reinventing the model. It is about enabling what already exists, because innovation doesn't fail due to lack of ideas. It fails when talent and capital and policy doesn't meet with a functioning system. And if we get that right, the next generation won't wait for opportunity. They will build it there and then. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Puyal. I now pass the floor to Ms. Ree Moon, Korea Foundation for Women in Science, Engineering and Technology, for her final 3-minute remarks.
Thank you, moderator. Today's discussion has been truly enlightening. As we wrap up, I'm thinking about the many young faces I see at my university, especially the young women and marginalized youth who have brilliant ideas but start with so much less. To create inclusive ecosystems, we must bring together our schools, long-term policies, and partnerships, turning their youthful courage into sustainable business success. We must ensure that a business failure does not mean a failed life, but rather a batch of experience that our partners are eager to hire and reinvest in. We need to value young people's spirit of challenge as a professional asset, creating a world where no young person is afraid to try again. We need to support the whole journey of young entrepreneurs so that they can actually lead the digital future. Because in the end, supporting youth innovation is about building our sustainable future together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Moon. And our final panelist is Dr. Felipe Paulier, UN Assistant Secretary General for Youth Affairs. Your final 3-minute remarks.
Thank you, Ursula, also for your great moderation during the whole meeting. So I would say three final reflections. The first one is that this is maybe one of the most critical discussions, especially for developing countries, where the majority of the young people actually live, no? And while we are talking about countries that are still facing critical gaps in terms of infrastructure, access to simple and basic services, sometimes in relation to technology and facing the digital divide, these countries also have the unique and most critical asset, which is human capital. And I've been in first person experiencing the creativity, the innovation, and the capacity of these young people, especially in regions like Africa, where 75% of the population in most countries is under the age of 35. So driving this human capacity and creating the ecosystem for this creativeness and innovation to thrive, I think it's one of the most critical topics for the next 15, 20 years of this UN. That's why I believe that the second reflection is really insisting on the point of understanding young people as development partners and not just as beneficiaries of the educational systems or the financing structures, no? And the moment that we are able to really align the policies, the finance, and the institutions about this reality is where we will get, the catalyzing force that young people bring in acceleration of the Sustainable Development Goals. And this brings me to the third point. And I will maybe highlight the intervention done by the representative of the Mayor Group of Children and Youth. We have the frameworks, we have the agreements. Member states of this UN came together in 2024 and they agreed on that structural framework in terms of acceleration, the Sustainable Development Goals, which is the Pact for the Future and its two annexes, the Declaration of Future Generations and the Global Digital Compact. So maybe my call here for all the member states in the room is for the leading support to implement those commitments in that Pact for the Future, including the Global Youth Investment Platform and the principles, the core principles on meaningful youth participation, including young people in governance systems across the 3 pillars of these organizations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ASG Polier. And with that, please join me in thanking our panelists and also all the wonderful comments and statements from the floor, and of course our youth innovator as well for his elevator pitch, Mr. Umida. I'll have a brief pause to reset the podium for the closing segment with His Excellency the President of ECOSOC.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the closing segment of this closing meeting. On behalf of the President of the General Assembly and myself, we thank all our excellent panelists for their insight and contributions, as well as all the member states and the other stakeholders for your active participations during the interactive panel discussions. I also thank our moderator, Ursula Owen, for moderating both the discussions today. I now give the floor to Piyok Sankar, Assistant Secretary General for Policy Coordinations in the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, to make her closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Excellencies, colleagues, young innovators, ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude this joint special meeting, I would like to thank all the participants for the rich and substantive discussions. Today's exchange has underscored both the promise of science, technology, and innovation, as well as the persistent barriers that limit their impact in many developing countries. Gaps in infrastructure, gaps in skills, gaps in finance and institutional capacity. And these gaps remain significant. But at the same time, rapid advances in emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence, are introducing new dimensions of inequality, particularly for those without the means to adopt, adapt, and govern them effectively. So against this backdrop, 2 messages stand out. The first message is how we must accelerate the transition from access to transformation, because digital inclusion is not enough. It needs to translate into productive capacity, to economic opportunity, and sustainable development outcomes. The second message, young people are already driving this transformation, but more efforts are needed. We've heard today how young people are innovators, builders, entrepreneurs. They bring creativity, adaptability, and energy, and our task is to support them, to enable them, and to remove the barriers that are in their way. In doing so, There are three priorities that emerge and deserve our continued attention. First, to strengthen national capacities for STI governance and implementation. Good policies matter, strong institutions matter, coordination matters, and above all, implementation and capacity building matter. We must invest in digital public infrastructure and create environments where innovation can thrive. The second priority, unlock the full potential of youth within the national and local innovation systems. Young people are already delivering solutions from climate action to digital services. We saw it today when young innovators presented their innovations and solutions to complex problems. But too many of them still lack access to education, finance, and markets. Closing these gaps is essential to scale youth-led entrepreneurship. The third priority, to strengthen international cooperation, because no country can do this alone. We need deeper north-south, south-south, and triangular cooperation. We need stronger support for capacity building, for technology transfer, and knowledge sharing. Excellencies, the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, where I sit, remains fully committed. Through the STI Forum, our analytical work, especially through the UN e-government survey, and our capacity development efforts on changing mindsets, fostering innovation and digital transformation, strategic foresight, and strong institutions, we will continue to support member states in their quest to advance science and technology and digital transformation for sustainable development. We will continue to help translate global commitments into concrete action. We will continue to promote digital public infrastructure and digital public goods. And we will continue to elevate youth voices in global policy processes. Today, we have identified some practical pathways forward. The task now is to turn them into action. So let's carry this momentum forward with focus and a renewed sense of urgency, working across sectors, levels of government, and with strong purpose. Let's act so that no country and no young innovator is left behind. Thank you.
I thank the Assistant Secretary General for Policy Coordinations. Now I will deliver closing remarks as the President of the Economic and Social Council. ASG Sankar, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, as we come to the close of this important joint special meeting, allow me to express my sincere appreciation to all the participants for a rich and forward-looking discussion we had. Today's exchange has reinforced a clear and urgent message. The digital inclusion is not destination. It is the starting point. But what matters is what follows, how we translate access into opportunity, how we translate skills into innovations, and how we translate ideas into sustainable livelihoods, particularly for young people. Throughout our discussions, several priorities have emerged with clarity. First, the need to move from fragmented efforts to coherent whole-of-system approaches that connect digital infrastructures, education, finance, and governance. Innovation ecosystems do not happen by chance. They are built through deliberate policy choices and sustained investment. Second, the importance of equity and inclusion is guiding principles. If science, technology, and innovations are not accessible to all across countries, across age groups, across gender and communities, they risk reinforcing the very divides we seek to close. The third, the recognition that young people are not beneficiaries of this agenda, but its drivers. Their creativity, their adaptability, and their entrepreneurial spirit are among our greatest assets. Our responsibility is to ensure that the institutions, policies, and financing mechanisms enable them to lead. Fourth, the critical role of the partnerships. The governments alone cannot deliver these transformations. Stronger collaborations with the private sector, with the academia, with youth-led organizations is essential to scale solutions and accelerate impact. Excellencies, we have also been reminded that the challenges are well known. The gaps in infrastructures, gaps in skills, gaps in financing, and gaps in governance are not new. What is required now is implementation at scale. ECOSOC, in partnership with the General Assembly, will continue to play its convening role to advance this agenda, fostering policy coherence, promoting evidence-based solutions, and strengthening accountability for results. Ultimately, success will be measured not by the quality of our discussions, but by the opportunities we create. Opportunities for a young entrepreneur to access financing. Opportunities for a student to gain relevant digital skills. Opportunities for innovators in developing countries to participate meaningfully in the global economy. This is how we will close the gap between commitment and delivery. This is how we will advance the Sustainable Development Goals. And this is how we will ensure that no young person is left behind in the innovations-driven futures we are shaping together. Let us carry forward the momentum from today with stronger resolve, strengthened partnerships, and with a shared commitment to act. I thank you. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the closing segment is now concluded. Thank you so much again for your active participations. The meeting is adjourned.